And apologies for lateness, but we were discussing what we had seen on site earlier in the day. In commencing these meetings, it's usual for us to introduce ourselves so you know who we are. So I'll go first. I'm David Lloyd. I'm a lawyer. I'm a QC. I'm a former judge of the Land and Environment Court. I'm a former acting judge of the Supreme Court. I'm currently a professor of law at Western Sydney University.
My name's Chris Young. I'm a town planner and traffic engineer. I've had over 40 years experience in development control, 30 years of that in local government and running a major planning department, and the rest is as a consultant. And I'm also on some other planning panels as well.
My name's David Logan. I'm an architect, planner and heritage consultant. Like Chris, I've worked in both the public and private sector, and I'm also on other planning panels.
I'm Virginia Wise. I'm a community representative. I have 30 or so years of commercial and residential interior design experience.
All right, the first item is confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 16th of May. Would someone like to
I'll move those, Mr. Chair.
do that? I wasn't there. So that's been moved and seconded and adopted. General business is nil. I should advise that there are no declarations of interest. There are no conflicts of interest here. So we can move straight on to the first of the development applications we have to consider. This is the proposed development at 49 Glaysville Road, Hunters Hill. Proposed three-storey mixed-use building containing apartments and commercial space at ground level. We have noticed that there are some people who wish to address us at this meeting. Who wants to go first?
We've got the Chair, you've got the applicant, which is that, and we've got some objectors as well. So.
Well, who are the objectors? I've got Mr.
Dawkins.
You
I'm
are?
not an objector. I'm appearing for the Agricultural Societies Council.
Well, we'll hear the objectors first.
Right.
Thank you. I've got that. Mr. Demopoulos, are you here?
My name's Theo Demopoulos. I live, or my mother lives at number 1 Howard Place, Hunters Hill.
Yes.
And the objections that we have is that, first of all, parking is a nightmare at 1 Howard Place. Howard Place.
Yes.
Over the years, we've complained, and I've got pictures on my phone at the moment to show you that every day that I go to Mum's place, there's parking, chaos. Garbage trucks have trouble coming into the place and emptying our garbage bins, and it has impacted my mother considerably. There's overdevelopment, I believe, in that area, and that's basically what I'm objecting about.
And what did you say your address is?
Number 1 Howard Place.
I see. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Theo Demopoulos, are you?
The same thing.
That's you. Okay. We have address here, 13 Fisher Avenue Ride.
That's where I live.
Oh, that's where you live.
Exactly.
You're speaking on behalf of
On
your.
behalf of my mother.
I see. I follow. All right.
Might be other objectors.
Now,
There might be other objectors.
are there any other persons other than the applicant or proponent who wish to speak on this matter? All right. We can now hear from the representative of the Agricultural Societies Council. You can now proceed. Your name, please, for the record.
Jeremy Dawkins.
Thank you.
I'm assisting the Agricultural Societies Council because I got involved because the then president of the Agricultural Societies Council is a neighbour of ours in the Hartley Valley where my family has a farm-ish or a farm-ette, and David Peters, the president, farms nearby, and about 6 months after the lodgement of this development application, they were getting nowhere and wondering if they should appeal to the Land Environment Court, and the window to appeal to the Land Environment Court was closing, and so when I said, can I help, they got me involved, and I've been involved one way or another ever since. Can I give you something about my credentials to speak on this matter?
No, that's not necessary. We just want to know what you have to say about the recommendation. You've seen the report. You've seen the recommendation for refusal.
Absolutely.
What do you have to say about that?
Yes, okay. Well, I'm speaking as a planner with
Proceed,
a
yes.
great deal of experience at all scales of planning in many states. Although I say yes, we have seen the report, it was on Friday that we saw the report. As you know, this development application was lodged in August 2017, and the report from the council has been seen by the ASC for the first time on Friday. And I would like to address the reasons for refusal. On page 18 of their report, or page 17 of their report, the reasons for refusal are listed. And if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to quickly address them, beginning with number 17. I want to, if you don't mind, go backwards. Number 17 is that the proposal will not be in the public interest. Well, that's just a sort of throwaway line. Number 16 is that the proposal would create an undesirable precedent. Actually, my view is that refusing it would create an undesirable precedent because it essentially meets the planning objectives for the site. The waste management plan lodged with the council is not satisfactory. The waste management plan may or may not be satisfactory. It can obviously be improved, and it can obviously be the subject of one form or other of a condition. The waste management plan could hardly be the reason for refusing the development outright. It may be the grounds for a condition, but it's not grounds for refusing it outright. The waste management plan may or may not be adequate. Who knows? The reason number 14 is that details haven't been provided on the effects of this development of using the right of way next door, and 13 is 12 is the same issue of the right of way next door. The right of way passes through the site to the west, and it's always been there, and the right of carriageway belongs to the ASC. Whether a drainage pipe can be run through the right of way is a matter that's yet to be established through negotiation with the corporate body next door, and ultimately, if necessary, the Supreme Court. But settling that matter can hardly be a precondition for a DA. It works the other way around. If they know they have an approval for a building, they go next door and start negotiating. They have approached the owners next door on a number of occasions and will continue to seek their approval, but first they need to know whether they can develop the site at all or not. And so again, if necessary, that could be the subject of a condition, 12 and 14. 13 is loss of privacy for the adjoining residents of the rear. That's a very specific matter. There's been detailed work on that. There are ways of ameliorating the matter, and the only view to the south is from a balcony, it's not from behind a window. So if there is overlooking, parking of some kind. It's person to person, it's not someone behind a window who may or may not be, which is different.
Mr. Dawkins, there is a more fundamental problem here, a question of permissibility.
Pardon?
Permissibility.
Yes, indeed. I'm coming to that, Mr. Chairman. I'm working my way.
That is the fundamental question.
Sorry, I'll speed up. That's where I'm going. The 11 is a construction traffic management plan. 10 is a construction management plan. Again, these are operational matters which, if the development is permissible, then it is. That can be resolved or can be subject to condition.
Our problem is we do not see this as being a permissible development at all on this site.
Yes, that's the issue.
Why don't you address us on that? I mean, you're discussing matters of detail, but the fundamental question here is whether or not the development is permissible at all.
Yes. Well, we think it's permissible. I will address that question, but let us say that under certain conditions it is permissible at all, then I think we need to deal with the other matters. So if it were considered permissible, you would be left with reason for refusal number 9, which is about the passageway. And again, this is a detailed design matter that would be addressed one way or another. 8, which is an entrance. Again, that's been very favourably reported on by the council's own urban design consultant, and it can be addressed one way or another, not grounds for refusal. 7 is the active frontage. Again, the urban design consultant of the council thought that it scored very well on that. It's certainly not grounds for refusing the whole thing. 8 is put forward as a grounds for refusing the whole thing, but it is not. And in fact, the proposed landscaping area is better than what would be required under the rules. Excessive excavation, Friday was the first time this was raised. It's raised as a reason for refusal, but in 22 months of discussions with the council, it's never been raised before, nor has 6. So we get to the critical ones, which is 3 and 4, that the site, the frontage is too narrow and the area is too small.
This is the problem, Mr.
Yes,
Dawkins.
this is the issue. That's right.
Clause 6.8 of the Hunter Hill LEP says, development consent must not be granted for development for the purpose of a number of things, multi-dwelling housing or a residential flat building, which this is, unless the site has at least one frontage to a road other than a service lane that is greater than 18 metres. How do you get over that problem?
It's not just residential. This is a mixed.
Yes, but there are residential flats there, aren't there?
There are, but it is a mixed-use development of an office with apartments over.
It's an absolute prohibition. You can't get over that.
The logic that was also, sorry to interject, my name's Adrian Hernandez, I'm the architect on the project as well, have some history. As outlined in the Statement of Environmental Effects in the clause 4.6, it was felt that our lot was an isolated lot.
But we cannot utilise clause 4.66. Clause 4.6 does not apply here because it's not a development standard.
Right.
The clause 6.8, which I've just read out,
Yep.
is a characteristic or attribute of the land which must be satisfied before any form of development is permissible with consent on this land. It is not a development standard. A development standard is something that identifies an aspect of a particular development or fixes a standard or specifies a requirement with respect to the building. This is not a development standard. It is not amenable to clause 4.6. It's a prohibition. That's your problem. This development cannot be approved on this site, period.
Can any development be approved on this site? Can any development be approved on this site?
Yes, you could have shop top housing. The clause that I just read out does not apply to shop top housing.
Which is what we've,
But
Which I
you haven't
believe-
got shop top housing.
because of the
You-
apartment, which is.
You've got apartments
So,
at or below
That's right.
ground level.
that's correct. So our submission.
So you'd have to completely redesign this development in order to make it permissible. At the moment, we do not have the power to grant consent to what you are proposing here. That's your problem.
Okay. We felt that during the DA lodgement, the objection to those clauses indicated that one of the options was to remove the apartment which is below and make
You'd have
it
to
part of the
you'd have to
office.
remove 3 apartments because you've also got 2 at street level. You've
To
got
the
2 at
rear
street
side.
level and 1 below street level. You'd have to remove 3 apartments. If it came within the definition of shop top housing,
Yep.
then that clause does not apply
Yep.
and it's permissible. But what you have proposed is prohibited.
Right.
This surprises me because, as I said, I came in after sometime after this all begun and got to this point. But what the council was saying at that point, that, and maybe they were just as wrong as
Well, we are independent of the council.
yes,
Mr.
yes, I
Dawkins.
understand entirely. But just as a matter of interest, perhaps, what they were saying was they can wear the frontage issue and they can wear the area issue. They won't relax the height issue.
Well,
And so the issue, there were then 22 months of backwards and forwards over a whole variety of things which came up one after the other. And as I say, some of them came up last Friday. But all along, the advice from the council, the formal advice from the council was that a third relaxation of, that is height, of a minimum amount, was a bridge too far, and that they had already accepted the frontage and they had already accepted the area. So,
well, Mr. Dawkins, we're not bound by what you
No.
have been told by the council. We are independent of the
I
council.
understand that.
And
but it's
if we don't
unfortunate.
have the power to grant consent, we cannot grant consent.
I understand that entirely.
You have 2 options, if I can say this. You can redesign it as shop top housing, in which it's okay, or you can amalgamate the site and have the required frontage. Amalgamate with next door,
Well,
then you can do what you're doing.
The latter is not an option.
Well then, they're the 2 options you've got.
Yes, all right. Well, I would hope that the panel could facilitate this process and allow the ASC to undertake the redesign and resubmit. I mean, resubmit to you directly, because it's been 22 months, during all of which time none of these 2 issues have not, until last Friday, these issues have not been presented as grounds for refusal. In all this time it was accepted that the council, I know you are, I'm glad you are completely independent. The ASC is delighted to be before you, but 22 months has passed while reasons 3 and 4 were not at issue, and instead it was waste management plan, right of way, all these things, traffic management.
They're all subsidiary issues. The fundamental
Yeah.
question is it permissible or not? We say it is not.
Right,
Is it
okay.
permissible on 47 Gladesville Road, which has the same condition? There is apartments on 47 Gladesville Road.
It's wider, isn't it?
it's not 18 metres.
Oh.
On 47 Gladesville.
That was approved under a different local environmental plan.
Okay.
After that was approved, the present local environmental plan came into force, and that's the controlling instrument.
Yep.
So, you're asking for a deferral.
Yes.
We can't do that. We can't do that because the deferral will involve a complete redesign, a different development. It would not be substantially the same development. All we can do is refuse this development, and you can come back with a redesign or an amalgamated site. They're the choices that are open to you.
It may not be a completely different development. It may be that the...
It would be a completely different development if it's shop-top housing. At the present moment, it's a residential flat building with a commercial component at the front. It is not something that we would accept as an amendment plan. It'll be a fresh application.
If the physical form stayed much the same and the office expanded into the 3 apartments you referred to.
I mean, it doesn't have to be the same office. It could be other commercial offices.
Yeah, but if the use of those 3 apartments changed to non-residential, if the physical form stayed the same and those uses were not residential uses, is that not?
No, that would involve a redesign.
And other issues.
There are other issues of a subsidiary nature, but that's the fundamental problem. And I can tell you, unless you can persuade us to the contrary, we have no other option but to refuse this development application.
Well, I shall try to persuade you, because when the Hunters Hill village plan was prepared, it envisaged this kind of development.
Well, the present LEP doesn't.
So your reading of the present LEP is
Yes.
that there is one use.
Excuse me.
Is that there is one use permissible on this site under the LEP, and that is it's an existing site. It's been there for 100 years, and the LEP says you can only have one thing on this site.
No, no.
Shop top housing.
You can have either fully commercial, if you like, fully commercial, no residential component, or you can have shop top housing. They're the options. Or you can amalgamate and have what you're proposing now. That's your choice.
Right.
But we have to refuse this.
Right. Well, it's a sorry story, isn't it? This could have been the advice on day one. Should have been the advice. The ASC should have been able to expect the council to look at this on day one and not say all the things they said, which is it's fine, it's good, we'll send it to the local planning island, it's what we're looking for. And they should have been able to say on day one, the council can't approve this because it's not shop top housing. It's a very narrow definition of shop top housing, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it's a different development.
Any other possibilities here? Anything
We've-
to make up?
We've offered our suggestions,
Can I make some suggestions?
and yes,
I think shop top housing would potentially resolve many of the other issues that have been identified. And those issues, while subsidiary, are still important and do need to be resolved. And I think may still have constituted grounds for refusal. Council is clearly keen to see retail development on the street front in order to activate the street, and certainly that's something that I would certainly like to see. I don't have any problem with the height per se. So if that assists you to know that, and I know some of my colleagues don't either. But
who would? Because it's can't be seen.
well, whatever, there's still an issue of permissibility, but I don't have a problem with that. But there are other aspects of the development that actually have been identified in the planners report, which go to SEP 65 kind of considerations or ADG considerations, and this is just too tight. You know, it is not the sort of entry that one would want for a residential building. You know, you've got lots of units running off this main corridor, which is very narrow. It would make it very difficult to bring furniture in, and just it's not high quality and high amenity. So I think that could be looked at as well, as per the planners report. Not that difficult to do, but I would certainly suggest that you consider retail at the front and perhaps push your office to the back. Apart from that, there are other things that really need to be addressed, such as construction impacts and the traffic implications of construction. You know, they really need to be resolved through a good construction management plan. It would be a fundamental issue for me if this came before me, and I'd need to, decide on whether it's okay to approve it, knowing all the traffic issues that are going to result from this, given the characteristics of the site. So you really need, it's so fundamental that I think you really need to prepare that management plan with your resubmitted application.
The ASC has invested a lot of money in traffic management plans, construction management plans, all these things. They've invested a lot of money in all of these things along the way. Having been asked for them, they've reduced them. Having been asked to do more, they've done more. They've got a very comprehensive construction management plan and traffic management plan, and all of these, this is how 22 months went past.
Yeah.
All on the assumption that it was worth investing in all of this stuff on request and doing more on request on the basis that it was at least permissible, at least theoretically permissible. All of that money and all of that time has been invested in this.
Well, perhaps your planner could have advised on that, but let's not go
Well,
there,
they did.
because I think
It's
the
not
chair
my-
has made it very clear it's simply not permissible, and I think he knows.
Ingham Planning did advise on it, and very, in a very extensive way. And the urban design consultant of the council was very favourably disposed towards the contribution of this to the street. So all of that added up to, we'll get there in the end. But
I think retail would make a much greater contribution. to
yeah,
the
of
street.
course,
Yeah.
but that's they're redeveloping it for a reason, and they are who they are. They are 194 country shows, and we should be glad that they are in a position to redevelop their office and to
Sure, no one's
stay
contesting
in
that.
Huddersfield.
No one's contesting it. I'm just offering these comments by
Sure.
way of helpfulness, hopefully.
I agree. But on the matter of the passageway, and I agree, I see, but that was raised for the first time last Friday. 22 months of discussions with the council, and that issue comes up. It's not raised by the urban design person, but it comes up on Friday. This is a very sorry story. Terrible, really. Shocking. But
Do you want to add something?
Yeah.
Yes?
There are some issues. Again, in my mind, the question comes up again. One of the first questions that I wrote down was, why not shop top housing? Because it seems to eliminate most of your issues. And even going through the 4.6s, there are a number of statements in there that I certainly couldn't support in a 4.6. The question with the development as it stands at the present time, if it was permissible, or you were going down the path of site consolidation, etc., because the whole principle of that clause is to get a greater shop front, is to get site amalgamations for residential flat buildings. And there is a process that's been set down by the Land Environment Court with planning principles about how you go about isolated sites. And that process has not been undertaken. And it's a fairly easy process to go through, but it wasn't undertaken in this particular case. And we all agree that in regards to the height, we don't have a particular problem in height, it's similar to the adjoining building. But from a traffic engineering point of view, you have a relatively unique site, particularly in its location, the juxtaposition to the intersections and the roads that are around there. So that there certainly is that difficulty. And you've got the issue with the right of way with a limited height. So that you've still got to be able to get the construction traffic, as you've seen from all the submissions that have been put in, that the construction management plan is a major aspect of what's going to happen in an area during construction of any building on this site. And then you've also got, after that, just how you get deliveries to the building. How are you going to get furniture vans in? How are you going to get those sort of things? And because of the uniqueness of that site, it's then something is going to park on Gladesville Road and it's going to cause problems. These are all the things that have got to be looked at in the development from there. The shop top housing overcomes quite a few of them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you will necessarily get an approval. It removes those particular the prohibitions, etc. But there are still a lot of issues that have got to be developed. Many of them can be overcome. I think if all those issues about overlooking, etc., they can be overcome by heights and by architectural treatments and things like that. But I think the traffic and those aspects are fundamental to the whole consideration of the application. And really, as the chair said, when we've looked at that particular part, it's a prohibition, and that came up by reading the 4.6s, and the question came up of looking at the issues that came up out of the 4.6, and the question was, whether or not that's a valid argument, and it's a prohibition.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes. I mean, this is good advice that you're getting
yes, I understand.
from expert panel members
Yes, I understand.
who've looked at these sorts of problems in the past. What I suggest you do is you go back to the drawing board with your architect and your consultant planners and come up with an acceptable solution.
Yes, I agree. We appreciate the advice. I just wanted to, just for the record, so to speak, I would like you to know that they have done a lot of work on all of these things, and they are fully aware of them. The site is the site. They've owned it for a long time. They've been in Huntersville for a long time, and the site being the site, they have to address those constraints. They are significant constraints, both at the front and the right of way and so on. And they've addressed them all. They've addressed the question of rubbish removal, etc., and access in various ways, and how the construction element and so on. They've done a lot of work, and they've spent a lot of money on all of that stuff, which may or may not be before you. But there's a pile of documents that have been submitted on all of these matters. I think what you said about you said any development on this site would face these problems, and if the problems are not soluble, then the site is simply quarantined. They must be soluble because an outcome that says this site can never be redeveloped, and if it burns down it will just have to stay vacant, is obviously not acceptable. And so they've been looking for solutions that are workable solutions, both through construction and through operations and so on. And it's in these documents which it now appears they should never have produced because I don't know, bad advice from internally and from the council from the very beginning. This development hasn't really changed for 22 months, and yet here we are trying for the last. We were told we would be amongst the first DAs before the panel, your first meeting. We were assured by the general manager that this project would be before you at your first or second meeting, and we are now whatever it is since your first or second meeting, over a year on, during which time this work continued, investment in specialist advice on all of these matters raised, communication with the neighbours and so on.
Mr. Dawkins, your organisation and your advisors will have to face up to the problems that we have identified. They're not insoluble, they are soluble, but I'm afraid you'll have to go back and reconsider the whole project.
The president of the, president, yep. Does anyone have anything finally to say to the panel? This comes as a big shock to them.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
May I please ask you a question, if I may? I'm sorry I come late with my query. May I?
Who are you?
I'm Cleo Dimopoulos from One Howard Place.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
Cleo's sister.
Yes.
Shall I stand for you?
What do you want to say?
The question I have is, any building that goes up on this piece of land, does it have its entry in Howard Place?
It has a right of access from Howard Place,
Because it is.
but it has a frontage to Gladesville Road.
There's no parking in that frontage on Gladesville Road, and I believe that the already congested and very much suffering Howard Place, which is a one-lane street, and you have to be there for a whole day to see what sort of problems it is creating now with the liquor store, with the pizzeria, with all those businesses. It is really, really problematic, and it has been for the last few years. So this is why I'm asking you the question. Any building that goes up in this site, if it has its entrance in Howard Place, I see it creating an even more serious problem.
Well, I can tell you, we'll have to wait and see what design they come up with.
They block our entrance doors, sir, and we can't enter our own house because people park illegally on Howard Place. So we need our rangers to be on top.
Well, I can tell you, we are refusing this application.
Thank you.
What you say will be considered when they come back with some other application. Then we'll consider that.
But can I ask, sir, Mr. Chairman?
No, that's enough.
Shot top.
You've had your say. The formal decision of the panel, I think it's unanimous, is to refuse the application on the grounds set out in the assessment report. I will add another sentence to ground 4. Ground 4 refers to the minimum street frontage. I'll add an additional sentence. Moreover, clause 6.8 is not a development standard, but is a prohibition to which clause 4.6 cannot apply. The rest of the grounds of refusal stand. The reasons for the determination are: the panel supports the findings contained in the assessment report and endorses the reasons contained in that report, together with the additional reason that clause 6.8 of the LEP is not a development standard but a prohibition. So that deals with that matter. So we can move, and I think it's unanimous?
Yes.
Everyone agreed? Good. All right. Next is the proposed development at 27 Wyballina Road, Hunters Hill.
We've got the lady objector that we set on site.
Yes. Now, just wait a moment while we clear the decks.
I thought I had an audience.
The ADG in there.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, for the record, your name and address, please.
Angela Klinikos, and
Yes.
I reside at 29 Wavalina Road,
All
Huntersville.
right, proceed.
So my objection is to the development application for 27 Wavalina Road, Huntersville, which we all know is residential. The plans are to build a 6 to 8 car garage space. However, this will impact our sunlight. It's already impacted poorly from the current wall that the neighbours have built on the southern side of their property. So now we'll have even further depletion of sunlight from the proposed plans that have been submitted. Now, going back to the plans, I believe that they haven't been drawn up correctly, and today when we were there on site, it was, you know, they were happy to say they were to minimise and to compromise. Well, I object to those two words because I don't think that I feel that I should not minimise and compromise my full sunlight over a garage to store 8 vehicles, which goes on to, with 8 vehicles, does that become like a light commercial space when we're in a residential area? So I'm perplexed as to why 8 cars need to be housed on one property for a family. Are they going to run a business out of there? I don't know. So for me, it's impacting on the sunlight. There was a site inspection on my property today. The architects didn't pick up on the recessed wall where the skylight sits. So I think they have to be drawn up again, or taking that into consideration as well. So I've got here too that I've also, it's my daughter's bedroom upstairs as well. So she was also saying that, you know, if we just lose more sun, there's going to be maybe the impact of mould, rising damp. We don't know. So they're my objections, is that I don't feel that we should have the right to full sunlight at any given time. And I'm objecting to cars, to vehicles versus my sunlight being compromised. And that's my case.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The architect.
Right.
Excellent.
Your name, please?
My name is Andrew Caruso. I work for Susan Rothwell and Anna Kempster, the applicants of the development. And thank you for letting me address the panel. So predominantly in response to the comments that were made at the last panel held on the 16th of the 5th, amended set of documents were provided. The garage has been set back 1.5 metres from the property boundary to address the issues of proximity massing. But in regards to the sole access to the northernmost skylight, we believe we'll have to reassess this, given that the current documents that we provided in terms of the solar access were taken into consideration that the skylight was on the same plane as the roof itself. So given that the fact that the skylight is actually recessed down, we may have to reassess this to fully understand exactly how much solar access is being lost. On the other matters, you say you've also provided to demonstrate the impact of views towards Glasgow Bridge and Luke Bay. Although it was noted that some of the view will be lost to the foreshore due to the development, we would consider this to be reasonable and strict compliance unnecessary, given that the location of the view itself is not high public domain, and there is a more ideal location to view from the park further down. The view corridor also doesn't provide panoramic views due to existing vegetation. And we also would like to point out as well that although the view corridor we saw today was quite significant, the corridor itself is relatively new, given back in 2016 the owners completed a separate proposal in light of the development that was taking place to remove 2 large trees, which were 9 and 12 metres tall, which were noted on the survey plans. And if these trees were currently still present on the site, they would have obstructed most of the views. So if the removal of these trees was actually combined with the DA today, we believe our deal would be seen as restoring some of the views rather than having a small impact on them. And it was also brought to our attention that for some of the documents that we provided, such as the montage from the water and montage from the street, some of the council members were a bit concerned with the clarity of the drawings, so I reproduced the photo montage at a high resolution to minimise and also remove the surrounding foliage in order to provide a more clarified image. And I also reproduced the photo montages taken from the street to clearly indicate the area of view that would be obstructed. And I brought copies of all these documents today for the panel wish to consider.
Before you go, the panel may have some questions.
I do.
The first question is, have you considered having a flat roof instead of a pitched roof on the garage?
That was something that we had considered, though we thought that it would take away from the integrity of the design of the house. It would be a less desirable characteristic. So which is why we put forward towards the pitched roof. And we did make all effort to make sure that the impacts that the proposal had were minimised as much as possible. Given in one of the stages of the approval of the application, the roof was lowered 700 mil, and we have tried to locate the elevation of the roof relative to the street as low down as possible while still maintaining compliant driveway grades down to the garage, because one of the main reasons of the development is the existing garage is elevated quite low relative to the street, which makes it quite difficult for the clients to access. So that is why the garage has been elevated above from where it is currently.
Other questions from the panel?
I do. I have a question for both of you. How many skylights are there in your house? And there's dormer window style?
Skylights 1, 2, bathroom 4.
Right, the drawing only shows 3 skylights. I think the location of the skylights on the roof space are incorrect. Tell me if I'm wrong, but the first room we went into, the first bedroom, has a small skylight closer to the boundary line.
Correct. And then
up on the upstairs, and then upstairs it has a separate skylight as well.
So when you came to the entrance, there's a skylight there.
That's right.
And then the bedroom that we went to.
Yep, there's a skylight. That's
there.
2.
That's 2.
On the northern side of the building.
And then there's one in the pitch roof where the bathroom is.
Yeah.
Well, that's that window that winds out, which
Yeah,
is acts like
that's
a skylight.
right.
And then on the entry level, there is just a small skylight that was on the other side, which you couldn't see.
Okay, so the placement of tell me if I'm incorrect here, folks. The placement of the skylights on the shadow diagrams are not actually correct.
That may be the case because given in order to locate the skylights on the site, we did have limited information at the time. In terms of the surveyor, we haven't had a surveyor locate these.
So the skylight that will be most affected in many ways is the one in the downstairs bedroom.
It is. I mean, it is. It'll impact. It'll impact.
My skylight count didn't add up,
it's
and the
horizontal.
locations didn't add up.
It's horizontal, so potentially that would be the one
So
that
in
is
fact,
the most affected.
The amendment of the shadow diagram should represent better the number and location of the skylights, because at the moment it doesn't.
Yeah, well, whatever it is, that we need accurate information
that's right.
about where those skylights are, the size of the skylights, but also the fact that you've got the cheeks of the roof that actually will cast a shadow over it as well, which I don't think anyone realised until today.
The recessed.
Good that we saw it.
Yeah.
So that might actually help you in the sense it might already overshadow the skylight.
Yeah, so it may be necessary for us to get a surveyor to actually accurately locate these skylights for us,
Yes.
and then we'll reassess our shadow diagrams.
And
So good.
the other question is, that you were unaware of the 5 extra windows until today, is that correct? Along the southern wall of the house?
We're talking about the glass brick wall?
No, the garage now has 5 extra windows that weren't on the drawings that we looked
Oh, yeah,
at
that's the bedroom
last time.
windows.
In the south elevation.
On the south elevation, so along the side of the garage. Right, okay. It's just that they weren't with us in the last submission, they're now part of a new drawing.
They're proposed to be obscure glass.
Yeah, they're only to provide light to the garage. They'll be completely obscure, so there'll be no ability to gain views out from those windows.
I've got a couple of questions if you...
Go for it. The only other one I have here noted is the gutter detail at the junction between the new roof above the media room. I don't know how that gets resolved as part of the
There's
process.
already a problem with that, with their existing garage
Yeah.
that's built now, and I haven't
And
brought
so-
to anyone's attention, but my
That's right. No,
advice
I've
is
got a
to- yeah.
question on it because it's always like the Achilles heel of the two developments, the point of which where they meet, someone eventually ends up with the water unless it is
Yeah, it's a
maintained.
box gutter, is it?
It doesn't say. There's no reference to the gutter, and I just didn't understand. You know, we're now touching whereas before we weren't. How that would be resolved in the long-term maintenance and water of the building. That's all. I thought that was quite important.
Yeah.
Well, once we got to the, so we haven't looked at the construction detailing yet, but
Okay.
once we got to the construction stage, that would be resolved by integrating a box gutter as the most common way in dealing with that circumstance.
Okay.
So can I also add, being set back 1.5 metres away from the boundary of where my existing garage is now, if planning to proceed and go ahead, would I require to have somebody to come and have a look at the structure of my garage the way it's existing, so we don't see any cracks happening?
You're asking for a dilapidation report prior to construction?
Yes.
That would be part of the, please tell me if I'm wrong, part of the provision provided by council for the approval. Is that correct?
Could be.
Possibly, yes.
Yes, okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think I need to tick all the boxes while I'm here and,
Okay.
and so forth, but, again,
So it seems to me that you've got a very high roof. So the springing point is already 2.4 metres, and then you go up, and it's a reasonably steep pitch. Not overly steep, but it's reasonably steep. You could look at other alternatives, such as a flat roof. You could look at a lower pitched roof. You could look at a slightly curved roof, all of which would reduce the overshadowing impact, any overshadowing impact that still exists, we don't know yet, but also would reduce the impact on view loss, reduce the view loss from the street. And I think we all think that's something that really you do need to look at. Having looked at it again today, it's not something that we specifically raised. We asked you for a view analysis, we haven't really done that. But looking at it today again from the street, it's something that we're all concerned about. So I would suggest you look at another roof form or change roof pitch that improves the amount of, or retains more of the water view.
and you do also have the jacaranda walks, with Huntersville Council, that actually come down Wyberlina Road as well, which they do walk down and you there to look at the views as well. So you do have those planned.
I think in respect of the view loss aspect, that I think you really need to go and have a look at that, of the Land Environment Court's planning principles in respect of what we call a tenacity case, and there are certain principles set down there to work your way through as to, you can't just determine that by yourself that it's not significant. There's actually some very, very good guidelines that are set down there and have been upheld by councils and the profession and the court for quite some time. So that's something, particularly in a local government area like this, where you've got the views and you've got iconic buildings, you've got iconic structures, you've got water, etc. from there. They're all important, and particularly from the public domain being the street as well, that's important. And there are when you go along that on the street, you can see that there are glimpses through to the water, to the boats and things like that. So that, and at the moment, it's, to me, it's quite significant, and the impact is rather large.
Are you prepared to modify your proposal in the light of these comments?
Yeah, we're prepared to consider the design of the roof, and we'll also complete a more detailed view analysis report in light of the guidelines that you've brought up.
I mean, what we are proposing is this matter be deferred to enable you to come back with an amended design, but you should also provide a view analysis.
Yes.
A formal view analysis related to whatever you come up with finally.
Yeah.
Yes. Otherwise, we'll have to refuse this.
Okay.
But we're prepared to adjourn it and allow you to come back with something that takes an account of what comments we have made here.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
You're willing to do that?
Yes.
All right.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that because it's been deferred beforehand, and we did ask for a lot of that information beforehand, I think this is probably the last time we defer it.
Yeah, we understand.
Hopefully your neighbour will give access to the surveyor if need be.
Told the neighbour.
So it's in your interest as well to do that. Yeah.
Well, the formal decision then is that the matter be deferred to enable further amended plans to be prepared and a view analysis to be submitted.
Yeah.
And referred to a subsequent meeting of the local planning panel for consideration.
Do you want your consideration of the roof form? Or
Yes. Yes, as well.
the
Yep.
windows?
Yep. Consideration of reform.
Want your windows in?
Well, I guess I always object to people adding things when they weren't in the original submission and windows. So if we could include them,
So
or what's the best?
this is what I don't understand. If it's a garage, why does it need windows?
It was predominantly just to service the light into the space, so it didn't seem like so dark.
The cars don't need sunlight.
So,
Well, I think the neighbour needs to, so you need to know whether there be your form of view as to whether you're impacted by those. And I think you should have an opportunity to consider that.
Yes.
But I don't know whether you are or not. but you know that they will be obscure windows. So.
To assist, Chair, what I'm hearing is the plan be amended to look at the criteria of reducing impacts and ensuring that loss of views are minimised.
Yes.
Yes.
Cross views, take on board tenacity, and I also highlight Dive and Hunters Hill, which picks up cross views as well. The concerns of privacy and additional openings along the side boundary need to be reduced to reflect the previous initial application. And also another one is consultation with the neighbour to ensure that they minimise or reduce the shadow impact upon their skylights, northernmost skylights, which is the prime issue. And they're the amended plans, and discussion need to be brought back to the next meeting.
These are all advisory comments that you have to take on board.
Yes, we will.
All right. So the formal decision is deferral to enable amended plans to be supplied and a formal view analysis to be prepared.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And that being the final matter, informally close the meeting.
Meeting closed 5:25.
wishing the day away.
It's been a long day. Steve, we're on.